Hello and welcome to the next edition of our webinar series. In this episode, I will tell you more about how to manage ID verification tests and pretty much how to run your compliance function inside MyDocSafe account. I will cover just maybe 2-3 things. First, we'll tell you how to create an access permission, a role suitable for a compliance person. And then I'll tell you how to access and manage ID verification tests. And in the last section, I will just do a quick summary of how to actually send ID verification requests to your counterparties. So let's start. The first part is about access management. In most small businesses where everyone has admin rights, that's really not a relevant issue. Everyone has access to everything, and that's by design, presumably. But in any company with a separate compliance officer, potentially someone from outside of the company, or a compliance team or teams, access management rights need to be closely monitored because of privacy regulations. You don't want to basically overshare personal data. So how did we solve that challenge? Well, first you could create a compliance role and assign it appropriate access permissions. Minimum set of permissions to run, or to act, actually not to run, but just to access ID verification data is to have access to contacts and access to ID verification test results. These two permissions allow a person to view and mark ID verification tests. It would not let them send ID verification requests through workflows. In order to do that, you would need to give further access rights, potentially to prospects or to portal groups where those ID verification workflows are embedded. But that's the minimum set required just to actually see the results. So the way you could configure your account is to give, let's say, separate set of permissions to your sales team, which can send pre-registration workflows or proposals, and they will be able to send out those ID verification requests. They won't be able to see the results of those tests. Actually, they don't need to, but the compliance team would then be able to pick up those results and manage them appropriately. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention in this webinar. So now let's go back to the contacts table. As you can see, it's a table that is sortable and has a column called date of ID test. It is empty if the contact didn't go through any ID tests through MyDocSafe. But if you sort it, you will see that actually we've done a few tests here. That's the date of the latest test. The tick box means that the system believes that the test is up to date, and a crossed calendar icon means that the test has expired. How would you set those flags? You could set them manually inside the ID verification test report, or you could set up a timer and automated process which would do this for you. And you could do this. You could set up that automated timer here in settings and in contacts. So you could select the number of months after which you would like an ID verification test to be marked as expired. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, there are several reasons. One is potentially because you need to ask your existing clients to refresh their ID verification tests once in a while, maybe every year. So you would want to set the timer, and you don't want to remember when to ask them to do that refresh. Another reason is if you would like to make sure that your clients do not go through the same test more than once. So, for example, imagine that you're an accountancy and you have a client with several companies, so they act as a director in different capacities, and you onboard them through several portals, and each portal can have a separate number of directors for that particular business, and each director needs to go through a verification process. Now imagine that particular person has gone through a verification process already once, and now is being onboarded as a director of another company, and that the workflow they need to go through also includes an ID verification step. So now, well, you wouldn't want that person to go through the same test again, because not only it would cost you, but also the user experience would rather seem cumbersome. It's not necessary to verify that person anymore. So in order to make sure that MyDocSafe does exactly that, you need to make sure that the test is up to date. So that after a person goes through a test, it's marked as up to date, and then if that same person encounters another workflow with an ID verification step, as long as that ID verification step is exactly the same, the system will basically allow the person to skip it. If that test request is different, or the test is expired, then the person will be asked to go through that step again. So that's pretty much that's the second reason why we have those flags. Right. So how do you manage your ID verification steps? Well, as you can see, you could on this table you see the summary of the tests with the date of the last step and the status. If you go inside a customer contact sheet, you see the list of tests they've gone through here, and if you click that, you will go inside and see the ID verification report. And there you could mark it as up to date or expired. You could export it as a PDF as well. Now, if there is a person, let's say from sales or from operations, who does not have access to ID verification test results, then they will get an error. Or actually, I think if they try to click on it, that section will actually be completely unclickable to them, which is exactly what you want. Right, so the next thing I wanted to cover is about selecting the right ID verification tests that you want to run. And you can do this, you can run those tests in two different places, either in portals or in prospects. In portals, you need to embed those workflows inside the portals, and you need to invite your clients to those portals first. So for the clients to access those workflows, they need logins. To get logins, they need to be invited, or alternatively, you could send them a self-sign-up link through which they can set up their login details and then get access to the ID verification workflows. So that's the first method. There's another method which is a slightly more light touch, which is to embed ID verification step in a sort of an open workflow, which you can do here in prospects group. This is where you would send a business proposal, an offer letter, or a quote, or some people call it a pre-registration workflow. This such workflows can include a number of steps. So here is just a quick example. So let's say if I want to send a workflow to John Doe, I can stitch up a number of interesting steps that include a quote, including my pricing. I can ask for a signature, and I can also add an ID verification step, presumably before I ask for the signature. So if, for example, I do want to have a light touch onboarding process where the client accepts my quote and then immediately signs a contract, I'm required to actually check the identity of the person with whom I'm signing the contract. So I need to put that step before I actually ask for the signature. So this is where I would do it. You could, of course, create a template so that for that type of workflow, and every time the workflow is cloned, the ID verification step will be embedded in it. And in that template, you can then select the type of tests you want to be run. We have currently 3 types. The simplest is checking just for the identity. based on a selfie and a scanned copy of an identity document. There are additional 2 tests. One requires an upload of a scanned copy of a document that can prove the address of the person. And then the third one checks for any adverse media or sanctions, or basically checks if the person is exposed politically. So that's how you would do it. Right. So is there anything else I want to cover? So we've covered, just to summarize, we've covered access rights, which is relevant if you have a separate or outsourced compliance function. We talked about how to manage and access your ID verification tests, and why it's important to know when they expire. And then I also did a summary of how to actually ask clients to go through those verification steps, but I didn't go into details because we cover them in separate videos. So I think that completes the 3-part series about how to run your compliance function in MyDocSafe. I hope it all makes sense. If not, please email us at customerservices@mydocsafehq.com. Thank you for your attention, and bye.